We all use water every day, whether it's for cooking, showering, watering our lawns, or even flushing the toilet. But have you ever stopped to think about what happens to the water after it disappears down your drains? The answer might surprise you. Once this water leaves your home, it travels through underground pipes all throughout the city to a treatment plant. But the story doesn't end there. Thanks to clever technology designed by environmental engineers, this used water can get a second life through a process called groundwater reuse. In this video, we will explore how this whole process works and how your toilet water is actually safe to be recycled and reused. As many of us know, with climate change and drought conditions continuing to get worse, along with the issue of subsidence we learned about in our last video, water is considered to be a hot commodity. While some call petroleum liquid gold, there are others that consider water to be just as valuable. And with groundwater reuse becoming an increasingly popular and promising solution to finding alternative water sources, who knew that the water in your toilet may be considered liquid gold too? In simple terms, groundwater reuse means taking water after it is used by households and industrial operations, putting it through a process to clean it at treatment plants, and then returning it back to good use. So now, during times where we would have normally just discarded the used water, we can instead turn it into a valuable resource. So, how does this process actually work to ensure the treated wastewater is safe and suitable to use for its future intended purpose? Well, after our water is used, it is collected and transported through sewage pipes throughout the city and delivered to a wastewater treatment plant. Then, the water must go through a rigorous multi-step treatment process. The first step in the process is the preliminary treatment. You can think of this first stage as a giant colander. This screening process allows the wastewater to flow through screens to remove large objects like food scraps, rags, plastics, and debris. Then, the wastewater continues into tanks called grit chambers. This is where other smaller but heavier materials like sand, gravel, and grit can settle out to the bottom of the tanks. This preliminary treatment step helps all these larger materials be removed and properly disposed of so they don't cause problems to the equipment further down the line. The next step in the process is the primary treatment. In this step, the wastewater flows into large settling tanks called primary clarifiers. The wastewater sits here for a little while so that the stuff left over from the previous step, like grease and, you guessed it, poop, can settle to the bottom. This settled material is called sludge, and it's then pumped out of the tanks for further processing and disposal. Now, our wastewater can move on to the secondary treatment. This stage introduces tiny yet mighty bacteria that form clumps called flocks, that then get to work munching away on the organic materials that are left in the wastewater, like leftover food particles and soap scum. This process is like having a microscopic cleaning crew that gets rid of the unwanted guests in the water, which significantly reduces pollution and cleans the water. The second step of the secondary treatment process involves transferring this new mixture of wastewater and flocks to another set of tanks that are called secondary clarifiers. The wastewater is allowed to sit so that the flocks can settle to the bottom, creating even more sludge. Some of this sludge is recycled back into the previous tanks to help the bacteria population, while the rest is sent out to go through further cleaning processes. After these processes are complete, the treated sludge can be disposed of in landfills, used in farmland, or converted to a form of compost. At this point, the wastewater is in a lot better shape than it was when it first arrived at the wastewater treatment plant. And in many cases, the treated wastewater can now be reused. But, depending on the intended use of the treated wastewater, some additional advanced treatment may still be required to remove the remaining unwanted particles and bacteria in the water. There are several options that can be used to do this. One treatment step is called filtration, which is basically a giant coffee filter. This stage removes finer particles and solids that are still left over in the water from the previous stages, making it even cleaner. Another treatment step is called disinfection, which uses methods like chlorine or ultraviolet light to eliminate potentially harmful bacteria and viruses that may still be lurking in the water, but not visible to the naked eye. This ensures the treated water is safe for its intended use. And there you have it. We have successfully sent all your used wastewater through this insane multi-step treatment process and turned it into water that's ready to be reused. But before we talk about how this treated water can be reused, let's address the elephant in the room. Is this process really safe? The answer? Absolutely. Wastewater treatment plants operate under strict regulations and use intense monitoring systems. Engineers ensure that the treated water goes through regular testing to make sure it meets all the required standards to protect public health and the environment. So now, how exactly is this treated water used? Depending on the level of treatment it went through, it can be used for various purposes, and this is officially called groundwater reuse. One purpose is to directly refill the underground aquifers that have experienced excessive groundwater pumping by carefully injecting the treated wastewater. Or a process called spreading can be done, where the treated water is spread over the land. This could help replenish wetlands, restore damaged ecosystems, and even naturally restore groundwater levels by allowing it to soak down through the soil layers. Other options for groundwater reuse include releasing the water back into rivers and streams, and of course, using the treated water to provide irrigation for large spaces that need lots of water, like parks, golf courses, and even crops. This helps conserve the valuable freshwater resources that are usually used for irrigation. And all these groundwater reuse options are just the beginning. Engineers are constantly working on improving the technology behind wastewater treatment. They are incorporating even smarter monitoring systems to optimize the treatment process and improve efficiency. And they are even coming up with new advanced ways to further treat the wastewater so that the water can be used for even more purposes. As we have learned, wastewater treatment plants are not just hidden heroes. They're crucial players in our water story and the future of our world. By transforming used water into a clean water resource, they help conserve water, protect our environment, and ensure a more sustainable future. So, the next time you turn on the tap or flush your toilet, remember the fascinating journey your used water is about to take and the unseen heroes working tirelessly behind the scenes, the wastewater treatment plants. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out our last video about subsidence that talks about the global problem that can be helped by groundwater reuse. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss out on more engineering fun.